sing in Strike Anywhere. This is the third show of the tour. That's how the tour has been. We had one show in Zurich canceled, so we spent the day at Lake Constance outside of Lindau, and we swam, and it was cold. It was fun. Let's see. It's been awesome. We haven't been to Europe in 2 years, so it's good to get back in touch with all of our friends here and to see all the different places, you know. Depends. It depends on what the driving is like. If we have to be in a place early, we drive overnight. Like tomorrow, we're going to drive overnight from here to Vienna, so we'll be there early and we'll be able to go into the city and see things. It's usually, if you play a place 4 or 5 times, one of those times you'll either have a day off before, or you'll have an early morning, or something will happen. But most of the time, you kind of only see the street the venue is on, and if you have beautiful mountains on the street that the venue's on, then that's good. It's efficient that way. I think each of my bandmates would answer that differently. I don't know if there needs to be a difference, or I think it's more regional. Like because we're from Virginia, we interpret the kind of music we play as both hardcore and punk equally. We love bands that consider themselves punk, that are from regions or cities that have an exclusively punk scene that's always separate from the exclusively hardcore scene. It's not that way in our hometown, and it wasn't when we started growing up in the culture. You know, DC is close by, and so you get those bands that were inspired by punk, but they invented hardcore in America, essentially. But then if you look at other cities where hardcore became its own rarefied kind of thing, DC always had a lot more punk in the roots of its hardcore than maybe, say, certain seasons in New York or even Los Angeles. Honestly, though, I think they're both vital, very important, and whether they're separate or together, like we're down for both or each. What was used, I guess it was invented in 1931 by a man named Sergei Tchotchkin, and he was a designer for the Iron Front group, which was organizing and educating people about the rise of fascism here in Europe. They attributed different meanings to each of the arrows. At the time, they were relevant, like anti-Stalinism, or state communism, and anti-Weimar, which were the militarist monarchist culture of Germany, and of course anti-Nazi. Now, in a modern context, you could attribute different meanings to the arrows. Of course, anti-fascist, anti-racist. And I would also say that state corporatism, which is a blending of an inhumane global industrial capital system that then gets to rewrite law and dominate government and create a theater of democracy, which people's voices don't have much power. That would also be what the symbol would be against. Also, yeah, I mean, a lot of the values that we sing about, a lot of the values that the radical punk scene has been fighting for and living, I believe this symbol represents really well. It's also the perfect symbol to cover a swastika. So it has this design function too, but yeah, it goes beyond our band, it goes beyond punk rock, and it goes beyond rock and roll music even, it goes further back. And punk rock is a culture where people love symbols all the time, whether it's a very small thing, where this band has this symbol, or if it's a bigger thing, like this idea is something we live and die for, and this idea needs to be carried on. And I think a lot of the symbols in punk rock can be both. So a lot of bands that we love have extremely important and passionate design elements to them, like the band Crass, for example. You know, things like that, like where it's more than just the music or the people in the band, and it's a movement of ideas that transcends sound. Anyway, that's the humble, tiny piece of the world that we want to contribute to. Certainly like an understanding of the devastating impact of consumer capitalism on the lives of workers worldwide, and especially women workers in third world countries. And the recent circumstances in Bangladesh have, you know, once again been a horrible window to the West and the consciousness of consumers about the human cost of cheap goods. So women's rights, like rights of the disabled, rights of sexual minorities, like those are huge things, and they're kind of bubbling to a head, even in the mainstream legal universe of the U.S. and the West. But I still think that there's a huge problem with media consolidation, and that there's not a way for people to explain or express them. Even though there's the digital age and everyone gets to have like a 5-minute YouTube moment, you get to see the ground level of revolutions, but you don't get to see the manipulations behind the scenes of elites who get to game the revolutions. Or I mean, it's very difficult because people know what their passions for freedom, but there's not a developed radical structure for people to plug into all the time that hasn't been destroyed by some facet of the dominant culture that justifies religious and government elites to continue to perpetrate their economic imperialism on their own people and on people across the world. So it's a long answer and it's a good question, but I would just say everything. I mean, some of us are also vegan, vegetarian, and we stand for animal rights and like working with people to stop the exploitation of animals and the service of industries and stuff like that too. So there's like personal things that we do outside the band, and then there's like things that we write songs about, and sing about, and benefit groups that we work with. So we recently did a benefit for the industrial workers of the world, which is an anarcho-syndicalist union in our hometown and worldwide. And the Anarchist Black Cross too. So there's a lot of causes that we interface with and try and help when we can. We're going to continue this tour for the next 3.5 weeks, and we're going to love it, all of it. And then I think we continue to write slowly a new album. We don't have any plans to record. We don't have any other things, nothing structured about it, but we just want to make songs that we believe in and make a document that matters, at least to us, if not to the people who follow our music. Hopefully both. In December we have some plans to tour the west coast of our country, which we haven't in as many years as we haven't been here. So we're doing it on our own timeline as we can, but obviously like the global economic recession has made things a bit harder for a small punk band like ourselves to travel as much as we used to. But it doesn't mean that like anything else has changed and the fire is still lit.